Hello and welcome to the Dad Whisperer. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Watson, and you know by now that my passion is to help dads become heroes. And if some of you are listening live, that's great. But in case you didn't know this, you can now listen to any of the live broadcasts later on iTunes at the Dad Whisperer, or you can go to my website at drmichellewatson.com to listen to any of the past shows or re-listen to this one. And you know that every week I do On Your Mark, Get Set, Go. So picture yourself standing side by side as fathers getting ready to run your fathering race. I'm your coach, and I have a friend along with me today. You are going to love her story. And so I want you to picture the two of us standing there cheering you dads on, you fathers on in your fathering race. And the go is going to be the action step at the end. I'm going to go backwards this time. The get set is the stories that you're going to hear. And On Your Mark is the title. So let's start there with On Your Mark. The title today is When You Long for Your Dad to See You. And I have one of my dear heart friends, Lee Wolfblum, joining us today. And Lee and I go way back. I was thinking about this probably a decade, actually. So let me tell you a little bit more about her so that you will be already up to date with a little bit about why I've invited her to tell her story today. So Lee is a mental health practitioner and best-selling author of 2 books. The first one, Table in the Darkness, A Healing Journey Through an Eating Disorder. And I can tell you honestly, as a clinician, a mental health clinician, I recommend this book often for women that have eating disorders because it is so raw and real, and it's a story of redemption. If you know anyone that needs that kind of a story to speak into their lives, get Lee's book on that one. And then her new book is titled Brave is the New Beautiful, Finding the Courage to Be the Real You. Lee works in the field of eating disorders and substance abuse, and today she is going to be opening up about her relationship with her father because they have been through some really tough seasons with what she calls great grief and misunderstanding, even taking her to the point, not all because of him, but I'm saying her story includes even a suicide attempt. And yet now they've landed on the side of joy and connection. And I think of no better person to talk to this issue about what is it like to long for your dad to see you than Lee. She lives in Edina, Minnesota with her husband and 3 boys in what she calls the frat house. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. So welcome, Lee.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, what a joy to have you here. And thank you for even risking vulnerability. You are being a brave beauty today by telling your story. So, Lee, I just shared a little bit about you, but I would love you to just open up, set the foundation by sharing a little bit more about yourself.
Yes. So I was born the 3rd child into a family, which made our family 5. And from an early age, my dad would joke around and say, oh, tables aren't made for 5 and roller coasters aren't made for 5. And that message, although it wasn't meant to harm, really did a number on me. At an early age, that message was portrayed to me as I didn't belong in this family. Mm-hmm. And then you combine that with, I also pretty much came out of the womb with this very boisterous, theatrical, dramatic personality.
Which is what I love about you, by the way.
But it was in a family system that wasn't really quite prepared for that. I also was the so-called accident. So there wasn't an expectation for me, and so that was constantly reminded to me throughout my life. And I think the key really, now I'm 44 and looking back through all the work that I've done by writing my books and doing, therapy work and things like that, is my dad and my personality could not be more different. I'm very quiet. He's very quiet. I'm very extroverted. He's very organized. I tend to be pretty chaotic. Mm-hmm. So that relationship in and of itself was difficult growing up because we were so different, and it caused a great difficulty for me as a child growing up.
Yeah, understandably so. Yeah.
Yes. And I think, I can remember back being a young girl, and, now I realize my dad is very quiet and shy and a man of few words. And then there's me, in the car with him trying to connect. And I always felt like he didn't love me because he wouldn't talk to me. Mm-hmm. And what I didn't understand was that he isn't a man of many words, but I took that as that there was something wrong with me, along with all the other messages. Mm-hmm. And then when I went off to college and, really decided to major in theater and kind of go my own path, it was always as if I was doing something wrong. It was always as if, and that was just the implied message. This was not what he meant, but it was just how I took it, that I didn't fit in because I was so gregarious and boisterous. I wasn't the daughter he wanted because I didn't, I majored in theater and I wanted this life of creativity, not this life of stability. And it was very challenging for our relationship because of mostly just because of the way we both were different and created differently.
Right. And I think what I want to highlight that you said is that many of us women, I think all of us, look at our dads for a reflection back of who we are in their eyes. And you're talking today about longing for your dad to see you. Lee, what would have helped? Because I'm sure we have a lot of dads listening or daughters that have the exact same personality and wiring that you and your dad have. What would have helped you to hear from your dad?
A really great question. What would have helped, I think, at a young age was, when you think about how we all have love languages, and I think what really would have helped me was him being able to understand and maybe understand that I was different and that was okay. And I think it would have helped for him to validate that difference in me versus try and make me fit into the idea of who he thought I was. And I think I definitely needed more verbal validation than I was getting. And I just think that only happens when dads take a step back and do some self-reflection in terms of, hey, I don't think, the age I grew up, I don't think many dads would have done self-reflection. That's why I think this is so wonderful. And actually, my husband and I talk about this often because our boys are very different. And there's definitely one boy who is more similar to my husband, and I see him giving that kid way more validation than the kid who isn't like him. And so I remind him often, don't forget, just because he's not like you doesn't mean he doesn't still need some sort of affirmation from you.
And
I do think most...
Does your husband listen to your input? Because I think that's a key thing here, is if dads would listen to their wives or their girlfriends or their sisters telling them, hey, I think your daughter needs this, they have to be able to take that without being defensive.
Yes, and he's very open to that. I think, like I mentioned, I think men nowadays are definitely more tender-hearted maybe, or more, my dad was the provider, and that was his role. And I think he did a fantastic job of that, and also taught me some wonderful things in my life about being a person of your word.
Yeah.
But what I needed was him to see me. I needed him to see me. And then he wasn't the reason why I developed an eating disorder, but I felt invisible in my home. And so part of my shrinking and my disappearing through an eating disorder was maybe me manifesting something that was playing out in my home life.
Yeah, well said. And here's what I wonder. I mean, you're a mental health clinician, as am I. Would you ever recommend that a dad write out his words on a piece of paper if he really doesn't have a skill set to be very verbal?
Yes, absolutely. And actually, that's one of the things I would love for dads to do, to be able, if you're not a verbal person and it's too awkward for you to say to your daughter, here's what I see in you. That's where I think it should start. Like, here's what I see in you, coming from an I statement. I see that I see you're talented. I see you're unique. I see that you're beautiful. Those kind of things would have been life-giving for me at a young age when, I was just struggling in so many different ways. Instead, the message I got most often was, tables aren't made for five, or you're the accident. And
were those things said to you or implied?
They were said often, and it was a joke. It was a family joke. And the other piece about it is I just was born very sensitive and overly sensitive. I would say it's my thorn and my gift is that I'm so sensitive. It helps me in my work, but it also can get me in trouble. And so those things really hurt me, and I didn't have a way to express myself about why it hurt me. And then once I went through treatment, we had to do family therapy, and these things were spoken and finally out on the table, me saying and having a voice like, hey, I need you to see me for who I am, not who you think I should be. Yeah. The other piece is I think it also completely affects my relationship with God in terms of how I think God sees me.
Yeah.
I think I get very confused about how God sees me because I in my own mind think I know how God sees me.
Right.
And then I look at Scripture, and Scripture doesn't say that. Scripture says I'm loved by God and adored by God
and seen.
Beloved
and seen. Yeah. You're not
seen.
Invisible to him.
Right. And then the other piece of this, though, if you were to have my dad on the show and ask him, he would have a different response. He would say, I loved her and I did everything to love her. It was like we were, shooting arrows and just completely missing her. And now I do see that he loves me and he did love me, but it missed us. It missed both of us.
Yeah. That's a powerful way to put it, is that if I was to talk to him, you would hear a different side of it. And I appreciate that you're highlighting that most dads aren't trying to miss or hurt their daughters. But if they don't ask at times, even if it's in a note, how am I doing at being your dad? Or is there any way that I'm missing you or anything you want from me? I think what courage that would take,
Exactly. What do you need from me?
Yes.
But now, I don't know if you're ready for the next part of the story.
Sure.
But, our relationship now is so different. I'm able to look back now and see that he loved me fiercely. And he did it in the only way he knew how. Right. And
which was providing, not talking.
Yeah. Providing. Yep. And that's how he grew up. That's what he was told that he should do. And so it's not his fault that he got this daughter that needed so much more, Yeah. But that's just kind of how it played out.
Yeah. So I want to go back to one thing you said, Lee, which I believe dads could benefit having highlighted, which is that you would be teased. And so saying like, oh, you're an accident, or I think you even told me once that you might have been told that you were the backup daughter,
Yes.
And that saying those things to be funny, I think dads need to be aware that teasing is a way to shut down the heart of your daughter. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, and it's interesting now that I live in a house, my frat house with boys. I mean, that's the way boys communicate. That's the way men communicate. They razz each other. And
yeah, good point.
So, it happens in my house all the time, and I'm always like, boys, is that loving? Like, are you sure those words are loving? Yeah, it might be funny, and you might get a laugh, but are you sure that's loving? And I think, honestly, it was he was being endearing. I think he was trying to connect with me, but teasing was a very common thing in my house, and being so sensitive, I couldn't handle it. And I still can't handle it. It's still, like when my siblings do it, I can only handle it for a little bit, and then it hurts.
Right.
So
right.
yes, we were at breakfast a few years ago.
You and your dad?
My dad and I and my sister, and it was my birthday, and I said something along the lines of, "Oh yeah, I maybe in the accident," because now it doesn't bother me anymore because I have a really, really good relationship with my dad.
And he knows how that hurt you now. He had ears to hear that. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And he looked at me and he's like, "Oh, the accident." He's like, "Didn't you know my mother's only sibling died when my mother was in her early 20s?" And so my dad said, "Your mom didn't want to have just 2 kids in case one died. So we had you as the backup plan."
Oh.
I was like, "Oh," and I said to him, I said, "You know what, Dad, that's probably not any better. I think you should probably just stick with calling me the accident."
Oh.
But here we are now, that did not hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
Did, because now I know that he loves me,
mm-hmm.
and he would go to the end of the world
mm-hmm.
for me, and I know that now. But it's hard when you're a young person, especially when you're a teenager and you're trying to navigate the world.
Yeah.
I have no blame for him at all. I think he did the best he could with what he had.
Yeah.
And what's funny, there is one thing that my dad always used to do, which was very interesting since he was always so shy,
mm-hmm.
is when he dropped me off places, he would play this game where he would drop me off and then he would say, he'd roll down the window and say, "Hey, you forgot something." And then I'd come back to the car and he'd say, "I love you." And he would do it 3 or 4 times.
Even when you were a little girl? This goes all the way back. Uh-huh.
No, I take this back. This is after my parents divorced when I was probably around 13.
Okay.
Which, remember, at 13, the last thing you want is your dad honking the horn and yelling out the car, "I love you."
Exactly.
So I do this to my kids now. Wherever they are, I will do it to them. I will yell out, "I love you," as loud as I can, embarrass them. I don't care, because I want them to know.
Yeah.
And I think when I think about the through line of why I know he loves me is because of those brief moments like that where he was able to express it
mm-hmm.
and make sure I knew it. Yeah. And that's what I think has carried us through.
I love that. That you could tell that your dad was trying, but you had to be older to look back on that and see that. So for dads listening today, and I asked you this a little bit earlier, but I know you are a wealth of wisdom. I mean, honestly, you guys have to know listening is Lee is my friend whose depth is so beautiful to me. And so as we're just having this conversation, because you've been through the fire, that's why you have credibility to me, is you have lived out what you speak now. And so it's not just a pat answer, right? Or putting a Band-Aid on a deep wound, is you've gone in there. And I wonder what the turning point was, because dads that may be right here with a daughter going, "I don't think it's ever going to get better. Like the bridge is bombed out." What would you tell dads, either that your dad did or didn't do, but it sounds like he did join you in treatment at some point. What would you tell dads to do to help there be a turning point for them to take the initiative to help heal the relationship with their daughter?
I would say what my dad has done repeatedly is apologized. And once we got into therapy when I was in treatment, and we really sat down and talked about it, he apologized, and because he didn't know what he didn't know. Right. There was never an intention of harm. It just was what it was. Two people, trying to navigate life and really missing each other. So I think that was one of the key moments. But then there were a couple other moments that were very powerful. When I wrote my first book, I was very nervous about how my family would react, but I also knew that I was going to take the risk because I wanted to share the story so it would help people. Right. And I was home because my family was in Kansas, and I was home and had this very large speaking engagement. And I asked my dad if he would come. And he said to me very honestly, he said, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you for how far you've come and all you've done. And I can't hear you speak. And it really kind of crushed me. But I appreciated that he was being honest. And I said, okay. I said, well, how come? And he said, well, because you're comfortable reliving the story of my struggle with an eating disorder. But he's like, it's too painful for me. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciated his honesty. And I said, okay, Dad, I really appreciate that. He said, I just can't come to hear you speak.
Wow.
So my book, and he also said he wouldn't read the book. And I respected that, but I have to say I was a little hurt. Mm-hmm. And then I went home for a book signing at Barnes & Noble. And I knew he wouldn't come. I had just planned on it.
Yeah.
And I looked in the back of the room, probably 5 minutes into the talk, and my dad was standing there. And there was nothing more I needed than that moment of him just showing up.
And he saw you. He saw you there.
He just showed up. Now, after the book signing, he didn't say a word. He didn't say anything like, I'm so glad you're there. I saw him sneak in, and then he kind of snuck out. And that, for me, was life-giving. Yeah. And he was just doing, he's not a man of many words. So for him, he just showed up. Right. And he did what he could. And then later, he was diagnosed with testicular cancer. No, prostate cancer. Mm-hmm. And he called me to tell me that he was diagnosed.
Wow.
We were both crying on the phone, and he said, and I read your book today.
Are you kidding me? Wow.
No. And I said, oh, I was scared. I'm like, Dad, and all he said was this: I am so proud of you. I am so proud of you, baby girl. I love you so much. And then he said, and I'm so sorry for everything that happened. And, to have that, and that's the one thing I try and do with my kids. Like, when I am wrong, to go to them and say, I'm sorry. Because that gift my dad has given me, that's a lifeline to give that to your kids. You're human. And he just was like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry how you took it. Yeah. I'm sorry for what I did. And that's just a gift.
What a gift for a dad that has the courage, like you said, to read and hear your story that included him all the way to a suicide attempt that, he was woven into the whole story, but it took him a while to be at the place where he could hear it. Well, this time is going way too fast, but I would love to just even highlight here at the end your new book, Brave is the New Beautiful. And I wonder if you could just talk to the issue of bravery that it takes to be a dad, to make amends, because bravery is a concept that men relate to.
Yes. Yeah. And, I think the bravery isn't like jumping out of a plane or, running a race, but a bravery is being able to look at somebody eyeball to eyeball and say, I'm sorry, or say, hey, what can I do to be there for you? Like, that's really scary.
Yes.
Especially a dad to a daughter, because dads are supposed to be, strong and all, all these images that we have of dads. But to do that for your daughter, you're preparing them for their husband,
for their future.
And so if they can have a good relationship with their father, it will help them so much in their future relationships.
Absolutely.
With their own husbands.
Exactly. Well, let's close with a go step. I always love to have every person I interview. If you were to give one go step to dads of daughters listening today, an action step, what would you say, Lee?
I would love for every dad to either go to their daughter, I know this dad and daughter, and they text a lot, but they don't talk a lot one-to-one. Yeah. And they have a great relationship, but it's just easier for them to text. So whatever way works for you, to just really ask her to see you. How do you want to be seen by me?
Beautiful.
Do you want words? Do you need time? Do you need, what is it you need from me as a dad? What a gift.
Yeah.
And your daughter might be like, especially if she's a teenager, she might be like, "Oh, Dad," but she'll tell you eventually.
Mm-hmm.
She will, and I say this to my friends. I'm like, how am I doing as a mom? Like, tell me, what is it that you need that I'm not giving you? And that's a very brave, and brave is vulnerability, and that's a brave place to step into your daughter, but you're digging at her heart. Mm-hmm. And girls connect through relationship.
Exactly. Exactly. So you're saying, really dads, important. Get in there. Oh, Lee, thank you so much for coming today, sharing your story. On your mark today, the title's been When You Long for Your Dad to See You. You've heard from Lee Wolf Bloom, author of Brave is the New Beautiful. You got to go get that book for your daughters. She will love it. And Lee has given you a go step today. Dads, go and connect with your daughters in person or text on the phone and just ask what your daughter needs to be seen by you. And remember, you can always write me at drmichelle@thedadwhisperer.com, or you can go to my website at drmichellewatson.com for more free resources. So thank you, dads, daughters, for listening today. Get out there, pursue your daughter's heart with intention and consistency. Go, dads.